The husband broke down the closet door where she was hiding from him and fired twice.
For 23 years afterward, he convinced almost everyone that she had killed herself.
Until a prosecutor asked a single question that destroyed the entire defense in 10 seconds.
Fernanda Urfali was a successful fashion designer, married for only 6 months.
What the police didn't know was that while the husband claimed it was suicide, there was a phone call that proved otherwise.
And today, you will understand how an heir from a traditional family evaded Interpol for decades and why he was found now in 2026 living a life of luxury in Bahia while the victim's family was still crying out for justice.
I'm Marcos Campos, and this case is truly unusual. So let's get to the facts.
The wedding.
To understand why that night in the closet of that apartment happened, we have to go back a bit in time to a very specific wedding. March 8th, 2002, International Women's Day. The bride was Fernanda Urfali. She was 28 years old. She was a fashion designer from São Paulo.
According to her brother, who later described her in an interview, she always had 18 lipsticks in her purse because she loved fun, loved life, loved everyone, loved living. She had never seen a psychiatrist.
Nunca tinha tomado antidepressivo.
And she was a woman who was starting her career in the São Paulo fashion world and was about to marry the guy she thought would be her partner for the rest of her life.
And I'm saying this right away because it's very important. These are links in this criminal chain. Her fiancé was Sergio Naras, a 38-year-old businessman at the time.
Família tradicional, igreja ortodoxa, dinheiro.
And their wedding ceremony had about 250 guests. It was at the Orthodox Church in Vila Mariana, in the south zone of São Paulo. Everything was nice, everything was perfect.
Pretty much one of those weddings straight out of a magazine, you know? But there's an important and unusual detail, I would say. A week before the wedding, her fiancé disappeared. He was missing for about 48 hours.
Her family was very worried and asked his family to file a police report, but the groom's father, Sergio's father, dismissed it. He said it was just an express kidnapping. He said the kidnapping was quick, it's resolved, and life goes on.
So the wedding went ahead as scheduled. Fernanda got married thinking it was strange, but she thought it was just a one-time thing. A strange situation that happened once and wouldn't happen again. A month after the wedding, however, she found out the real reason for his disappearance.
And from that moment on, what her mother would later call saving a life began.
Quick message for you guys. Today, May 15th, there's a Pix promotion on Insider's website with 5% off when you pay with Pix.
But if you use my coupon Marcos Campos, you get 15% off if it's your first purchase there, and 10% if you're already a regular customer. So that adds up. And if you find other promotions on the website, you can stack those promos you find there as well, okay? The link is in the pinned comment, just click it, and it will be applied automatically. And we already know, right guys? I'm always wearing my tech t-shirt here. For example, now I'm going to work out, but I also wear it for everyday stuff like going to the supermarket and so on. I wear it all the time. It's the kind of t-shirt you can wear over and over, and it still looks brand new.
I've had this one for about 2 years and I can prove it. Just check the videos on the channel to see I've worn it for a long time.
So, when you get a piece from Insider, you're making an investment, okay? Take advantage of this promotion to get an even better price there, because it's really worth it, alright? It's a piece that you're going to have for a long time.
A month after the honeymoon, Sergio sat down and told Fernanda that he was addicted to cocaine, explaining why he disappeared the night before the wedding, remember?
Yeah, it was an ongoing, long-standing addiction he'd kept hidden. And finally now Fernanda knew, right, the likely reason for that 48-hour disappearance.
Nothing confirmed, but probably right anyway. For those who know, a hint is enough. Well, Fernanda considered separation at that point. She kind of felt betrayed, right? Man, she had just found out that the man she was in a relationship with, whom she had just married, lied to her for months about who he was in every way, right? Completely. Her mother later even said that she actually talked to her daughter and even asked her to consider it. To give the guy another chance to save a life, to not throw everything away, like a 6-month marriage, because of an addiction that could be treated. Look, a really noble attitude, right, from Fernanda's mother, and because of that, she ended up staying. But then, the rest started to show up. The disappearances kept happening. One time, just so you have an idea, he disappeared for days, about 2 days, after she supposedly went to the hairdresser with a supposed friend who was single, and he, I don't know, thought she was cheating on him. And here we could say, a link in this chain of criminal behavior. Why? It's the kind of jealous, unstable behavior that her family, according to reports, started to notice in him. We'll notice a pattern later on too. The instability that was possibly happening inside this marriage hadn't started to show in her yet. It had started to show around her, coming from inside the marriage itself, from her husband. In other words, the problem was never the victim, as people tried to make it seem later. It was actually the person sleeping next to her. Well, he used to go to places she had no idea about, she couldn't even imagine. According to what the public prosecutor's office would later claim in the indictment, he had extramarital relationships with travestis and even took part in orgies. She found all of this out little by little, and I don't even need to say it, right? Everything just fell apart for her. And there was another layer to all of this, okay? The most expensive one, we could say, of them all. The marriage was under a community property arrangement, and according to the prosecution, he was afraid of splitting the assets in case of a divorce. And we've seen it many times here that this, let's say in the triad, motives, means, and opportunities, is a pretty strong motive that blinds potential killers, don't you think? And I'm not even saying that's the case, okay? Just to be clear, supposedly. But that was exactly the point where Fernanda was on the night that opened the episode on September 14, 2002. She had been married for 6 months. Now, she knew everything her husband was doing, and because of that, she was considering her next steps, which probably wouldn't be by his side. But unfortunately, her next step lasted only as long as a phone call. At night. That night started with an argument. There isn't an exact record, of course, of what was said inside that apartment, right? Within those 4 walls, the exact content. But there is a record of what happened around it. The apartment was on the 5th floor of a building on Basilio Machado Street in Higienópolis, an upscale neighborhood in Sao Paulo, and this happened around 7 in the evening. At some point during that argument, Fernanda left the bedroom and locked herself in the closet. She then grabbed her phone and called her brother Julio Orfale. She asked him to come pick her up there. Back then, guys, there was no WhatsApp, to communicate in real time, right? So she called her brother. She called anyway and waited for him to answer so she could ask for help. Julio started getting ready to go. He believed his sister and her other 3 siblings also wanted to go along. So, there were 4 siblings heading to that apartment to help their sister. But between the call and the arrival of help, let's say, what happened inside the apartment was very fast. Too fast. Sergio broke down the closet door and he had a gun with him. Unregistered, by the way. Fernanda was there on the other side with no way out, cornered in a room of just a few square meters. The man fired twice. One of the shots hit Fernanda, who didn't have much chance to survive, and the second shot went out through a window in the apartment. In other words, other people were also at risk there, without having the slightest idea, right? And when Fernanda's 4 siblings arrived and went up the stairs to that apartment, it was already too late. They entered the apartment and their sister was already there, lying on the floor. Julio, one of the brothers, would later describe that scene inside the house in a way that stuck in everyone's memory. Her mother, who had also gone there, was screaming, "He killed my daughter!" Even before seeing the body, before seeing Sergio, before hearing any version of what had happened, that motherly instinct was screaming that because of all the circumstances, right? Well, the police arrived soon after and Sergio was arrested. The gun there, the pistol unregistered, was seized. And when he started talking at the police station, he already had a ready-made version of what had happened. His version was as follows. There was a detail that seemed almost unbelievable, and worse. There was a professional willing to confirm that.
Hold on, because you won't believe it.
Sergio Naras told the police that his wife had taken her own life. That she was very depressed, going through a tough time with a lot of serious mental problems, and that her death was because of that, by her own hand. And this is where the story gets especially bizarre, because he wasn't supporting that version alone. There was someone backing him up, guys. Shortly after the wedding, according to the family, after he wrote in an interview, Fernanda was referred to a psychiatrist. And that psychiatrist wasn't chosen by chance, okay?
He wasn't chosen by her, nor by her family.
He was recommended by her father-in-law, Sergio's father. He was a psychiatrist supposedly connected to the same Orthodox church that the family attended. This psychiatrist prescribed antidepressants to Fernanda, even though there was no record of any previous psychiatric treatment in her life. And when the case went under investigation, this same psychiatrist came forward publicly to say that the patient had expressed intentions to do what she supposedly did. So it was plausible that she had done that, and what Sergio was saying was likely true. So I ask, how can a healthcare professional in just a few weeks certify a suicidal tendency with no history at the request of the husband's family, who are completely involved in a case that was under investigation? But the prosecutor of the case, Romeo Zanelli, he asked a simple question that destroyed the entire version they were trying to build, brick by brick. He destroyed that convenient narrative, let's say, with something extremely simple. Well, if she really wanted to take her own life, why did she call her brother to ask for help, to beg for help? Come get me here, for God's sake. The prosecution said that Fernanda never had a psychiatric history. She had plans quite the opposite, right? She had her career in fashion that was just starting. She was a playful person, right? Her brother even said she carried around several lipsticks and all that. If there was anyone with emotional instability in that house, in that marriage, it was Sergio. Disappearing like that for 2 days, supposedly addicted to that white powder, with episodes documented by her own family. And the gun? The weapon used is an unregistered pistol. How did she get it? He had an illegal gun at home, just there, available for anyone to take.
He was detained at the time for illegal possession, okay? It wasn't even because of the investigation into an alleged homicide, just for the illegal possession of the weapon. And he was held in pretrial detention then for about a little over 30 days.
After that, he faced the charges, but remained free. By the way, freedom is freedom, freedom, spread your wings over us. Well, in this case.
Bizarre. But look at that.
While that version was being upheld in front of the judge, believe it or not, Sergio was outside of jail, living his life as if nothing had happened. Nothing at all. Then the judicial marathon began, obviously, the longest that the Orfel family would have to face. Appeal, postponement, appeal, hearing scheduled, hearing postponed, appeal again, hearing scheduled, canceled, rescheduled. It's that mess you all know, right? Finally, in 2013 actually, for example, in 2013, look at how much time had already passed. The São Paulo Court of Justice reported a hearing was scheduled that year, and the judge postponed it, waiting for a decision from the Superior Court of Justice on a previous appeal. Year after year, the case dragged on. It went back and forth, over and over. Sergio Naras only went before a jury in 2018, 16 years after the crime. A jury in São Paulo convicted him, but the sentence was 7 years in a semi-open regime. Simple homicide, without aggravating factors, without vile motive, without any means that made it harder for the victim to defend herself, who was, as you remember, locked in a closet with no way out, right? Sentence for simple homicide, as if that had been, I don't know, anything, right? Like a bar fight or something. The public prosecutor's office appealed, of course, thinking the sentence was way too low. In 2021, the Court of Appeals agreed.
It was raised to 8 years and 2 months in a closed regime. Sergio's defense appealed to the Superior Court of Justice and then the Supreme Federal Court.
The main argument was still that her death was self-inflicted. His defense argued that Fernanda had taken her own life. But I ask you, my dear friends, if that's really what happened, why was he convicted?
Even if the sentence was ridiculous, on what grounds? Was it a self-inflicted death?
Leaving the weapon in her hand?
but that wasn't mentioned. Anyway, in May 2025, 23 years after she was killed, the federal Supreme Court ratified the sentence. In other words, they upheld it. The conviction only became final on June 14, 2025, and after that, the court finally ordered the issuance of the arrest warrant. And then, when the court officer went to carry out the warrant, guess what he found out? Look at that. Whoever guesses gets a treat. Sergio wasn't where he was supposed to be. He had disappeared. And Brazil would need 6 months of an international alert and a security camera to find him. Look really close by, you know. Praia do Forte. Sergio Nas, a fugitive from Brazilian justice, had his name included in Interpol's Red Notice. What does that mean? He started being wanted in more than 190 countries, but apparently he didn't leave Brazil, okay? He went to Bahia. Bahia, who doesn't love it? Praia do Forte is there on the northern coast of Bahia, about 80 kilometers from Salvador. It's a high-end tourist destination, with expensive inns, beach houses, foreigners, tourists, people with money. The kind of place that, if you go there as a tourist with medium or high purchasing power, I'd say no one is going to ask you anything. They'll just try to sell you something, but in a way you kind of blend in, go unnoticed, and you can stay hidden in plain sight. It was exactly in this setting that Sergio stayed. He spent months there. The following months, not at a relative's house, not hiding out in the woods, but at an inn, actually an upscale lodging. Living there, his routine was really easygoing. Until a security camera from the area's monitoring system, equipped with facial recognition technology, identified him. The police confirmed it and went to where he was living. On January 17, 2026 now, on a Saturday, Sergio Nas was arrested at the age of 61. 23 and a half years after the crime, and the police didn't just catch him. They also seized a car, an audio recording, 3 cell phones, and 13 vials of a substance that seemed to be that powder that makes people a bit agitated. Do you know which one it is? That's right. According to the prosecution, it was the same drug that Fernanda had discovered 23 years earlier and had been one of the reasons for the conflict that ended in her death. And everything was still there. In other words, 23 years later, the man who shattered all of this, destroyed a family claiming that addiction was a thing of the past, was arrested with exactly the same substance. Time passed for justice, but it seems that nothing changed for him. The defense came forward right after the arrest. His lawyer said something very specific, okay? That Sergio had been living in Bahia since before the arrest warrant was issued, that he had no intention of fleeing, that he is an honest person, elderly, with serious health problems. About that white powder that was seized, the lawyer said she hadn't spoken to her client since the arrest, and therefore couldn't comment at that time. The detention hearing kept him in custody, and he was finally going to serve the 8 years and 2 months he owed since 2002. What stands out in this case is what the brothers said, right? In an interview with Estadão after his brother-in-law's arrest, Julio Orfale said that he summed up, or rather, the 23 years of waiting. During these 23 and a half years of struggle, he always believed that his sister, first, had not taken her own life, and second, that she deserved justice. In another statement, he described the impact of the crime in a way that also left a mark. 1 bullet killed 15 people. It wasn't just Fernanda who died in that closet. It was the whole family's life that died there too. The mothers, who cried out, "He killed my daughter," before even seeing the body. 4 siblings spent 20 years watching their sister's killer, their brother-in-law, remain free. The life Fernanda never had, the fashion career she dreamed of and was just starting, the children she could have had. Whatever it was, right? The second thing that remains is also a question. The case only became final because the public prosecutor's office insisted, because the prosecutor, Romeo Zanelli, believed in the family, and because the Orfale family never gave up. But there's a question that screams, okay, why was it considered simple homicide in a case where the victim was locked in a closet, for God's sake, calling her brother for help? Locked in a small room with no way out by her own husband, with a gun in his hand, unregistered. Why did it take 16 years until the first trial? And why was the private psychiatrist, supposedly connected to the husband's family, who broke professional confidentiality to support a version of self-inflicted death that had no basis, never seriously questioned about this? And there's one more thing. Maybe the hardest one. It's the number. Sergio Naras will start serving an 8-year, 2-month sentence for the crime, right? He is 61 years old. He will be in a closed prison regime.
Based on the Brazilian penal system calculations, which we already know, he has a strong chance of moving to a semi-open regime before serving half his sentence.
Fernanda was only 28 years old when she died. She would be 52 today.
A man who took all her years away will serve 8 years.
Pretty fair, isn't it? That's ironic, for God's sake, okay? The scariest part is that for Fernanda, until not long before that night, he was still the guy, the person she chose, the one she trusted at the altar.
Enough to walk down the aisle with the guy. She had no idea who was really inside that person. Who was really outside that forced open closet door.
This is the case of Sergio Naras and Fernando Orfali. The crime happened in 2002, the final conviction came in 2025, and the arrest happened in January 2026. But I want to know what you thought about all of this. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a like and subscribe here for more episodes like this. I really appreciate your company. Love from the Redhead. See you next episode.